Final piece of this conversation, Sean, is today's show is the CF part of our TCF, which stands for college football. We're going to take a college football topic. And I think this is a great topic to build on from our previous segment, which is we are going to look and discuss. And Sean and I have not compared notes because we want this to kind of both, not be influenced, not talk each other out of a team or into a team, in our conversation. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the teams by conference that we think are legit title contenders to some degree, like unlikely, dark horse, whatever. And we'll kind of identify, are they a top contender? Are they a bit of a dark horse contender? And we'll explain that all. And so we're going to go ACC, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and then everybody else. Is there anybody outside the Power Four? Hint, hint. There is one, and we talk about them a lot. That is going to be on this show. And I will say, first of all, Sean, as we dive into this, there are more teams on my list than I thought I would have otherwise. I predicted 8, 9, and I actually have 8 teams that I view as top contenders, but I actually have 5 other teams that I want to mention as potential dark horses, and that list is a little bit deeper than I thought it was going to be. So I'm looking forward to this. So let's begin, Sean. In the ACC, how many teams from the ACC do you have on your list as title contenders for the? And when we talk about title contenders, it's essentially, are you good enough to get to the semis? Because if you're good enough to get to the semis, you're good enough to kind of win it all, in my opinion, in today's era. That wasn't always true in the past. If you got to the Final Four, because you didn't have to kind of go through a non-conference gauntlet in the round 1 in the quarterfinals to really prove how good you are. I think it's different now. If you can get to the semis, you've got a shot. And that's why I think all the semifinal games last year were competitive. Texas gave Ohio State a great game. Penn State gave Notre Dame a great game. I think the best team won both of those games, but they were hard fought, down to the wire, excellent postseason college football games, where in the past, just because you were in the Final Four doesn't mean you were one of the 4 best teams because of the way the system was. It was kind of harder to gauge. So if you can get to the Final Four, you've got a shot, even if it's an outside shot, to win it all. And that's kind of how we look at it. So who from the ACC, Sean, do you have on your list for title contenders? Let's start with your top one. So give me your number, and then we'll start with the top team in the ACC, according to both of us.
I'm going to be honest. I just have Clemson for the ACC. That's it for me. As a true, and I really do think they're a true title contender this year. I really do.
You'd put them in the top contender category?
Yeah, I would. I really would. I was really sometimes you have moments. You talked about that Music City Bowl in 2014 and how it kind of led into 2015 and what it could be for Notre Dame. I really think even though it wasn't the same result, Notre Dame won that game against LSU. Clemson lost to Texas, but the character and the response that they showed, and they're really young. The defense has always been, it varies a little bit. I think the defensive line, although talented and heralded, I don't think they gave the production that most people thought that they would give. But I think they kind of get back to that. The one thing I do worry about is their secondary a little bit. But I think overall, you're going to see that stout Clemson defense. But what's coming offensively, and of course, it all rests on the shoulders of Cade Klubnik. It just does. But he has so many weapons at his disposal now that he would just have to fall off the cliff to not have a successful season, in my opinion. And I think they're going to do enough. I think they'll probably get a couple of scares, a couple of good games in the ACC to kind of get them ready. But I do think they have the potential, the coaching, and the talent to be one of the top contenders in college football for a national championship and to make a run.
I'm with you on Clemson. I think that's why the Tom Allen hire was so important, because I think that we were in a situation last year where I did not feel like the talent that they did have was being maximized, especially on defense. You started to see it late in the year with when you looked at sort of how the offense started to kind of, to a degree, show its potential. It wasn't consistent, but you saw the potential with the freshman receiving core, and the offensive line finally kind of got settled in and healthy. And to your point though, Sean, the problem with that team was you got way too much talent on the front seven and at linebacker, and even to a degree in the secondary, to be losing as many games as you guys are losing, or at least to be looking as mediocre as you do at times, playing defense as you do. I mean, you're just like, how is that team not better? How is that defense not more dominant? And it was frustrating to watch. And I think the same thing is true of the offensive line. I think that's really the big key for me for Clemson this year. It's, does their offensive line play to its potential? I have a level of confidence in the Clemson defense because of what Tom Allen has shown, running a defense at Indiana, running a defense last year at Penn State. I thought he did a great job with that unit last season. I mean, look, the only game where I thought the defense really was the problem was the Oregon game. And they were just out athleted in that game. I mean, they didn't have the speed on defense to run with that team. And I mean, they didn't lose to Ohio State because of the defense. They didn't lose to Notre Dame because of the defense. I mean, some of that was just Notre Dame guys making great plays. I mean, some of those third down plays that Riley Leonard made were like, I don't know what you're supposed to tell that guy on 3rd and 9 to do against Jane Greathouse. That was a great ball, great catch. It's just sometimes you just got to tip your cap, say, that guy's really flipping good. And I think that's what last year's game more so was. And so when I look at this Clemson team, I see them as one of those, they're going to make a jump type of teams this season, as long as their offensive line can be as good as expected. It's like, I'm not overly worried about running back if the line's good. Like, I remember in 2017, Sean, you remember the Michigan State game, 2017, they're on the road playing a top 15 team that ended up winning 10 games that year, Michigan State. Really good run defense. They finished, I think, that year with the number 3 rush defense in the country, maybe number 2. Great run defense that year. And Tony Jones Jr. is already out to start the game because he got hurt the week before against Boston College. First half, Josh Adams gets hurt. Dex comes in, has one big run, catches a touchdown pass. He gets hurt. They're now down to Deion McIntosh, and they're running on Penn State in the fourth quarter. And you're just like, it doesn't matter who the back is. It's the line. And look, Clemson's got enough talent at running back that if their line plays well, they're going to be fine at running back. They've got to play well there, and that's why I do view them as a contender. I do have a second ACC team in here, Sean, and they are a dark horse for me, and they're at the bottom of my dark horse list, but I do think they need mention, and that's Miami. And here's the recipe for Miami, in my opinion. I think the upgraded defensive coordinator is going to benefit them. I think they play a schedule that is good enough this season to get in at 10-2, whereas last season it didn't. 10-2 last year hurt them. If they're 10-2 this year and they lose 2 conference games at the end of the season like they did this year, they're going to have wins over Notre Dame and Florida in the non-conference. If they go 10-2 this year but lose to one of those 2 teams, then they're in the ACC title game, which gets them in. And for them to get to that point, it means Carson Beck has to be better than I think he is. It means that their offensive line and defensive lines are what people think they will be. Because to me, a veteran quarterback who's good and 2 really good lines is a great formula to being a championship caliber football team. Then the big question is, A, is Mario Cristobal a good enough coach to get him there? And then number 2, do they have enough skill talent to get there? That's the big question for me with Miami, is I don't know that I love their skill talent outside of running back. If that's as good as what some Miami people think it is, I do have them as a dark horse, because there's going to be in my opinion, I think we're going to, part of the reason like Trev and I differ on Miami this year is I don't disagree with a lot of the issues he sees with Mario Cristobal and skill talent, but I just have always found that there comes a level of consistency that you get when you're really good in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And I do think they're going to be good on so then if their skill talent's better than expected, that's how all of a sudden Miami kind of has that where'd they come from moment in the ACC. And because their schedule is challenging, but not incredibly overwhelming in conference, I think they can, as long as they can split with Notre Dame and Florida, if they're 10-2 at the end of the regular season, they're playing in the ACC title game, which I think has them in a pretty good position to make to the college football playoff. And then now it's like, okay, now let your talent take over. So they are a dark horse for me. Let's go Big 12, Sean. I don't have any top contenders on here, but I have 2 dark horses. Do you have anybody from the Big 12 on your list? If so, let's talk about it.
Arizona State is definitely there. Texas Tech has been getting a lot of love, And I love Coach McGuire. I really do. I think he's a really good coach. And they've been doing their thing in the portal and definitely have invested to improve their recruiting. But I'm very interested in, I think Arizona State is right under. I think they're a dark horse for me. I wouldn't put Texas Tech as much love as they're getting. I don't know if I'm ready to commit, but Iowa State is another team that I think bears watching this year because they were right there until that loss at home into Texas Tech, which kind of seemed to like start the kind of descent because they had, the young quarterback, he was buzzing, he was making plays. They had the 2 wide receivers that were killing, making plays. They had an underrated tight end group, and their defense, that 3-3-5, they were all over the place. And then Texas Tech just came in and just lined up and just physically just ran the ball right at them and kept their offense off the field and got enough stops on defense in the red zone and ended up pulling out the game. And after that, they weren't able to recover. And I think because when you're like that, more than likely in order for you to get into the playoff, you're going to have to be near perfect because you're Iowa State and you're trying to get to that Big 12 championship game. And for some reason, I guess it was almost like Texas Tech showed everybody else, this is how you beat them. And then after that, every game just seemed to get tougher. Then they had some tough injuries after that as well that made things back. But, they have Beck back. I don't know if their young wide receivers are going to be as prolific as the guys they lost to the NFL. But they definitely have an elite coach. Like I like Matt Campbell.
He's a very good coach.
He's a very good coach, right? So
he's in his right element.
Yeah,
like, I think he thrives in that type of place where he can find those blue collar, hard. A lot. I mean, his roster's filled with a bunch of Matt Campbells, just not highly ranked prospects. All these different things. Just there's talent there, but we're a team. We work together. We play hard. We're well coached and all those type of things. I actually don't have Iowa State on my list because I don't know that. I don't think they were a title contender last year. I think they got a little bit exposed as not being on that level by Arizona State. Now, one game doesn't always mean that you're not a good team, but
those 2 dark horses I had
was Iowa State and Arizona State.
Yeah, I don't have anybody from the Big 12 as like a contender, but they are dark
same.
horses.
I don't nobody top contender. They're both dark horses. I don't have Iowa State on mine at all. Like even dark horse. I just don't see the overall talent. Losing a couple 1,000-yard receivers. I don't think they were there last year. I think that they're going to be a good team. They're going to be a top 4 to 5 Big 12 team, but I don't think they could even win the Big 12. But if they get there, that will be them maximizing their potential as a program is getting to the playoff, which I think they're capable of doing. I just don't think they have the playmakers. And that's kind of where Arizona State is for me, is they do have a quarterback capable of, Rocco Beck's a nice college football player. I just don't think he's got the playmaking potential that Sam Leavitt has. Now, I would argue Rocco Beck was a better quarterback than Sam Leavitt was last year. But I think Sam Leavitt's going to be a better player this year. But more so, Sam Leavitt has more playmaking ability than I think Rocco Beck has. But getting Jordan Tyson back, getting the Army transfer at running back with some talented kids they have coming back. They've got a ton coming back in their offensive line. That's returns more intact than Iowa State's does. I think Arizona State has a little bit more athleticism on defense. I think Iowa State had some really key losses on defense last year. I just don't have them there. But you also kind of like, do I really want to just completely write off Matt Campbell of surprising me? I just think they're just, I don't know that they can win 4 or 3, and that's where I'm at. I do think Arizona State potentially could. They're a dark horse. Here's my surprise team in the Big 12, Sean. I have Kansas State as my dark horse. And here's why. They have as dynamic of a backfield as you're going to have in college football this year at quarterback and running back. There aren't many teams that have 2 athletes as just explosive as Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards. There's a reason Notre Dame wanted both of those guys when they were coming out of high school. Elite level athletes, in my opinion. And J.C. Brown at wide receiver is explosive. That is the most explosive trio in the Big 12. I think their offensive line has a chance to be pretty good. It's all going to come down to, can their defense figure it out? Because when you've got the kind of dynamic athleticism that they have on offense, I say that's the kind of team that if they get hot in the postseason, they could go on a run similar to what Texas or TCU did a couple years ago with what they had at running back, Max Duggan at quarterback, and then, of course, Quentin Johnson at wide receiver. They had legit athletes that you could go toe-to-toe with a Michigan and say, we're not afraid of you because we can run. And that's why K-State is on my list. I'm not buying the Texas Tech hype. I got to, like, if a portal team is going to finally compete for a championship, it's not going to be Texas Tech. It's going to be somebody else. Could they get to the playoff? Sure. Sean, there's 7-8 teams that could win the Big 12 this year and get to the playoff. But who are the ones capable of getting there and then doing something with it? And that's why I have K-State there. It's that dynamic ability on offense that has me with them on my list. Am I completely nuts for that?
No, because I love Avery Johnson. But like you, I just wonder about the defense.
Yep.
And I wonder about the depth. With programs like that, I wonder about the defense, the depth, injuries, everything has to go right. It's a long shot of
you
a
said
bet.
it, though. You just said it. Everything has to go right.
Yeah.
For K, O-line's got to be legit. They got to stay healthy. The defense has to figure it out. I mean, they can't be a team that loses 5-6 starters to injury and they're going to go out there and win. I mean, they're not. You said it perfectly correct. Everything's got to go right. But I said this, and this is kind of what I did about the Big 12. I took the top 7 teams, and I said, if everything goes right, can this team win 3 games? Because I think if everything goes right, you're 12-0, 11-1, and you're getting a bye. So you don't got to win 4. That's part of it going right for you. Who can win 3 games? And really the only 2 that I looked at that had the athleticism and the line potential and the coaching, because Chris Kleiman's a guy that has experience winning 3-4 games to win a championship. He understands what that's like, having won multiple championships at North Dakota State. I say that's a team that to me has that ability. Plus dynamic athletes. I think that's where they're on there for me.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Before the recent events out in Utah, with BYU, if they had the quarterback coming back?
No, I'm not a big fan of his.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with, I've said this before. I think he's a gamer. I think he's very limited. He's like a poor man's Craig Krenzel. Not as athletic, doesn't throw as well as Craig Krenzel, but kind of brings that gamer type of thing that Krenzel brought to that 2002 Ohio State team. Just not as good. I also don't think losing him is going to be as big of a loss. I think they're still going to be a really good football team. My issue with BYU is more about when they get to that, like, I could see BYU getting in and maybe winning a game, but the deeper they get in and the more they're matched up against the athletes on the perimeter that they're going to have to face, that's where they're going to struggle. When they get to the semifinals, for example, or the quarterfinals, for example, assuming that they don't get a bye. If they get a bye and they get like the right matchup, could they win and get to the semis? And based on what we said at the beginning, doesn't that make them a contender? Sort of, but I'm breaking my rule here because that's more of it. You lucked out, kind of like you got that proper bye. You're the 5 seed, but you're playing the 12 seed whose quarterback is out or something. I mean, who knows what it could be? Or you're the 4 seed and then you're playing the 5 seed whose quarterback got injured in the first. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, but when you get to the semis and now those teams can match up with you in the trenches and toughness, and coaching, but they're going to way out athlete you on the perimeter, you're going to struggle.
This might sound crazy because we talked about teams that love being in certain positions. Like, man, a coach like Matt Campbell loves being in this position. That Utah program likes being forgotten too.
And they have a dynamic quarterback as well.
Yeah,
Devin Dampier is going to be really interesting to watch this year.
That coach staff and program, they like being under the radar because they're going to be physical. They're going to play tough defense, and like you said, if they have enough playmakers, they can make some noise in the Big 12.
We'll see. I mean, we've been talking about Tobias Merriweather having a breakout for a while. Does it come this year, Utah? And that would help. That would help a lot. But those are my Big 12 teams. I do think Utah is going to have a bounce back year. I don't know that they go from what they were last year to being able to win 3-4 games in the postseason. They're not on my list, but they are going to be a team that makes some noise in the Big 12 this year. Last year was an anomaly, in my opinion. That's not who that program is. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of go. So let's go to the Big Ten, Sean. First of all, how many teams do you have in the Big Ten between top contenders and dark horses?
I wanted to take my pom-poms, but I thought better of myself.
You can do it.
I wanted to get my pom-poms out like, yeah. No, I'm going to go with – I got 2 top-tier teams in the Big Ten. I got 2. I got one that's right there because I think they truly have made the right moves and additions in the portal to go ahead and improve on what they did last year. Mm-hmm. But I'm sitting right at Ohio State and Penn State. They're just
you're only going 2?
I'm only going 2. I know who they are. I know what they bring. If I would love to see a schedule that doesn't have them pitted against each other, so they meet in the Big Ten championship game, because I think it would be absolutely amazing.
In a non-rematch?
In a non-rematch, yeah. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen that way. Just Ohio State, Penn State for me. Too many uncertainties. Yeah, I could throw Oregon in there. Too many uncertainties for me. Nah. No, because we're talking about not just winning. We're talking about guys that can make a run. I need a track record to show me. I need something to show me. You just lost your number 1 receiver in the spring, unfortunately. Got a brand new quarterback. The offensive line, you lost a couple of cogs. And the defense, your defense is what failed you. So all of this speed and front 4, they got exposed.
They're not disciplined.
Yeah, it's like
they're turning guys. They didn't get blown out by Ohio State, Sean, because they just don't have the athletes, and they were just turning guys loose. They were just blown coverage. I mean, you're just running free, not even – it's like jogging into the end zone because they're not disciplined. That's how he runs his program, and that's a concern for me. So let's talk about the Buckeyes and Penn State because I definitely want to talk about Oregon. I have them on my list, but I want to have a conversation about it because I think you and I probably agree about a lot of things with them. Let's talk about the Buckeyes and Penn State first, Sean. Obviously, Ohio State, defending national champs. Yes, they lost a lot. Yes, the path is going to be tough this year. The schedule is not easy. But, folks, this is not what Michigan went through in 2023, where when Michigan lost all those vets, they had some studs at the top, but there was a big drop-off in the roster after the top 5 or 6. Plus, they dealt with all those injuries, and they had no quarterback to speak of, no quarterback. Ohio State's turned into Julian Sand. Yes, he's inexperienced, but he's very talented. They're still going to have the best receiving room in America. They should still be at least solid on the offensive line. And they won a title last year with an offensive line that was a hot mess most of the season. I mean, they just did. Yes, they lose some excellent players up front. A lot of talented young players coming in, stepping in for it. They lose Cody Simon. It's a big loss. They did a great job of getting Arvell Reese legitimate playing time as part of a rotation last year, like Notre Dame has done, like did last year. I think Arvell Reese is going to step in and he'll make more mistakes than Cody Simon made because he's younger, but I think he's going to make a lot of plays, and their secondary is still going to be outstanding. I didn't think Denzel Burke was that good last year. I thought he had a big senior slump, and he was banged up a lot too. I think they're actually going to be better cornerback this year than they were last year. Safety, they're going to be big time. this is still a really talented football team. Now, Ryan Day's got a lot to prove. I have some questions about some of the coaching moves they made. That's why they're a little bit of a concern for me. But at the end of the day, Ohio State's consistent. I mean, they're 11 wins every year. They're going to be in the playoff. And if they get there, they're good enough to get there, then they're good enough to win it, in my opinion. So they're on my list. Let's talk about the Nittany Lions, Sean. You have them as a top contender or a dark horse contender?
No, I have them as a top contender.
Let's talk about why. Tell me why.
And because I do, as much as we lament what we saw late against Notre Dame from Drew Aller, as much as we lament him not being able to make certain throws, he has a big arm physically, but just certain throws just seems like he won't pull the trigger and he makes bad decisions in big situations. I do think I believe in his character. I think he's a tough-minded young man. I really do. And I think he's a really good leader. I love their offensive line. I think their offensive line is going to be just as good, if not better, than it was last year. We already know the running back room, what they bring. They have just as much rich history at the tight end position in recent history than as Notre Dame does. And so offensively, and just it's going to be about
Sean, Luke Reynolds is really good.
Yes, he is.
Like, no, he's not Tyler Watson or Tyler Watson.
He's not Tyler Eifert. I mean, Tyler Warren.
Yes.
We're messing up all the time.
But he's really good. Like, they're going to be good there. They don't have to be what they were last year at tight end. They're going to be good there.
No.
He's a good football player.
And have they done enough at wide receiver? We'll see. But I think, because we had this discussion, the wide receiver is very much locked into Drew Aller, in my opinion. Can he become that guy? Because they're good enough to go ahead and win games and out-talent a lot of teams. But can he be in a different way? Because he's not about to line up like Riley and just use his legs to make plays. Can he make plays in key situations in big games to get them over the hump? That's what it's going to come down to, right? Because always with James Franklin and his program has always been those big games, those big moments. They're not able to make the plays. Even in a Big Ten championship game, they were right there with Oregon. Right, Oregon will punch him in the mouth, and you're like, okay, Penn State's about to fold, and nope,
they didn't.
They come right back at Oregon, and so
Notre Dame was on the verge of rolling them off the field in the second half last year, and then they denied. Dennis Sutton steps up and makes that big play, and they
responded.
Go down to 4, and they exactly.
Yeah. And so it's small things like that give you a belief, like, okay, maybe they have turned the corner as far as character in the program to say, okay, they've kind of steadied the ship. And now they're getting ready to go ahead and back up what they did last year. So I do think.
I mean, are the questions about James Franklin any different than the questions we had last year about Ryan Day, other than Ryan Day just had more talented teams? I mean, Ryan Day's been dominated by Michigan in his tenure as head coach. He has, lost to Kirby. Yeah, they were close, but they lost. Some questionable decisions in the end of that game. Play calling wise on that last drive that didn't allow them to go down to get in legitimate field goal range. You look at the getting out coached at home by Oregon and Mario Cristobal in 2021, start of that season. There are certainly some things you say, like, can he really win the big game where the other team has as much talent as he does? I think that's fair, because the only big-time program he'd consistently beat was Penn State. I mean, the two Notre Dame teams he beat weren't great teams. But then what did he do? He righted the ship and got his team to go out there and play their best football in the postseason, beat Oregon convincingly, beat Tennessee convincingly, beat Texas in a great game, and then beat Notre Dame in a game where they trailed after the first drive and then scored and never trailed again after that. So you're always that guy till you prove you aren't, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing that coaches get knocked for, and then all of a sudden – can't win. Oh, he won now, finally. So I think that's why Penn State, you got to say, yeah, this is what's going to make it. This is the roadblocks, but you can't look at that roster with who I ranked as the number one returning offensive line in the country with a top 10 returning defensive line. They just hired the D coordinator that just won a title and built Jim Knowles inherited a train wreck of a defense at Ohio State. And within year 2 had them rolling on defense, and year 3 won a title. he's walking into a way better situation at Penn State because Tom Allen left a good foundation of talent and coaching. So he doesn't have to turn things around at Penn State the way he did at Ohio State, where there was a culture problem on defense he had to fix. Like, you're walking into a good situation here. So I just look at Penn State and I say, are there stumbling blocks? Drew Aller's got to prove he can make those big-time throws. James Franklin's got to show he won't make those big mistakes, but those aren't hard fixes, guys. Those are him hiring someone that he trusts to be in his ear to say, hey, coach, we may not want to run a draw on 4th and 5 against Ohio State, when we got a chance to win this game. And in a lot of those years that they were getting beat by Ohio State, they weren't getting killed, guys. They're not out there losing by 40 every year to Ohio State. They're down to the wire. They can't win the game. It just takes that one year, that one right team that can kind of right the ship and say, hey, let's figure this out. So I think they belong in there. I do have Oregon in there, Sean, and I disagree with absolutely nothing you said. Nothing. I just feel like with the talent they do have, they are a team that can get hot. And I think there's something to be said for that. Ohio State was a very flawed team in the regular season last year. Very flawed. Almost lost to Penn State. Got beat by a mediocre at best Michigan team. Should have lost to Nebraska. Made some coaching decisions to get them beat by Oregon. But when they got hot, when they righted the ship in the playoffs, that team looked nothing like the one in the regular season. I just think Oregon has the talent to do that. I love Will Stein as an OC. I got questions about how their defense is coordinated, but they've got really talented players on the D-line. They've got talented players in the O-line. I don't know if it's going to come together. And they got a quarterback that can absolutely sling the football. Now, he's not the runner the other guys were, and I'm curious how they're going to respond to that. But I think they've got the talent that if they can somewhat make some adjustments from a program culture standpoint, because like when you ask me what moments define how a program is run, when I think of what if I could pick one moment that tells me this is why Dan Lanning's program is the way that it is, it's him jumping to the swimming pool with the defensive lineman that he, you know what I mean? Like, you're a very undisciplined coach who cares more about, like, it seems like having the cool Twitter moments than you do about building a disciplined, smart, sound football team. It's all flash for you, and flash doesn't win championships. I think substance does, but that's something that can be fixed. And if he does address it, then this team becomes dangerous. They're third of my 3 Big Ten teams, but I do think they at least belong on there because if he does correct some of those things, I do think they have a roster to get hot and make a run in the playoffs. With that being said, nothing you said I disagree with. I agree with all of it, which is why I don't think they're going to win it. But when I look at that roster, I say if they can fix this, this, and this, that roster can go. And that's where I'm at with Oregon and why I'm on there. Any counterpoints you want to make to that?
No, I'm pulling for my boy Dante Moore. I am pulling for him.
I like Dante. I like his dad, Dante, but I like Dante a lot.
Yeah, I want him to have a really successful season. Like you said,
that kid didn't forget how to throw the football, folks.
Man.
I mean, even just look at some of the throws he made at UCLA 2 years ago. He still knows how to throw football.
Yeah, and I think there is something. You talk about the Wisconsin game to the Penn State Big Ten championship game to ultimately, debacle that was the Rose Bowl for Oregon. You start to see, if you go back and watch those games, because I remember watching that game in the middle of the third quarter up at Camp Randall, like, why is this game even close? Wisconsin is playing with their third string quarterback right now. Like this.
Who could not complete a pass?
Yeah, like
10 yards.
What is going on? And you just start to see things kind of frayed at the edges for the operation of what they were doing. Then they go to the Big Ten championship game and the offense is clicking. They're just as explosive, but defensively, they couldn't stop Penn State. And Penn State was able to do basically whatever they wanted. And then you go to that Rose Bowl, and it was like you thought the time off would give them a chance to get things back. and it seems like they just couldn't ever get things back on the track.
They were woefully unprepared for that.
They were derailed. Absolutely. So
woefully unprepared for that game.
Yeah, I don't, man. Just I worry about the operation when things get tough. See, that's what I'm talking about. That right there
That's
is
fair.
a moment.
Yeah.
They had a similar testing of the character of the program as Ohio State did late in the season. And the character of Ohio State was shown through, and who that team was, that Oregon team was, came to the forefront in that Rose Bowl. Yep. Like when they got down early, they had the character of that team could have come forth and said, no. We're gonna get this back together and make this a game against Ohio State. And they let the rope go.
When you aren't prepared, when your coaching staff doesn't prepare you mentally and schematically and fundamentally, there is no let's right the ship during a game. Ohio State righted the ship in the preparation between Michigan and Tennessee. Oregon went into that game unprepared, which is just wild to me, and just quit. I mean, honestly, you watch them play, like, those guys quit. Like, no, Ohio State no-mossed 2 teams in the playoff last year. Let's not forget about that. Tennessee had a bunch of dudes like, oh, my hammy, in the second half of that game. Late first half of that game. That guy's, Sean, opting out in the middle of the game. Tennessee did. And I think Oregon did too. It was like, yeah, I'm out. Yeah, I'm out. I quit. I'm not putting any more effort in this. We're getting killed. And yeah, there's no doubt about that. So let's finish up with the SEC and then the other, Sean. How many teams do you have on your list as title contenders, whether they're top contenders or dark horses from the SEC this season? Because I'm struggling with my total answer on this one.
I do think Indiana can improve on what they did.
You think they can win it all, though?
I mean, we're talking about if they can get hot. I think what they bring back defensively, I really like. The additions they made in the portal. And once again, I do think they can manage. I think they can sneak into the Big Ten championship game. I do.
That's true. Yeah.
I think they can sneak into the Big Ten
I
championship
think they can
game.
get back to the playoffs, Sean. We talked about that before. I think they have a shot to get to the play. I think Illinois has a shot to get to the playoff.
Yeah.
I think Iowa has a dark horse shot to get to the playoff.
Especially with the addition at quarterback.
Yep.
If they can Iowa's always a quarterback away. They're always a quarterback away. So you're right. You're spot on with Iowa. But I do believe, I don't think Indiana's a fluke as a program. I just don't. I don't. I think they still have a ways to go. I don't know if they're going to come back and run it back the same way as they did last year. But I do think if they get hot and they can sneak into the Big Ten championship game and win that and get a bye, I think, they would have a chance to, let me be honest. A dark horse to win it all.
That's where we're like, to me, Sean, there's a lot of Big Ten teams that are dark horses to get to the college football playoff. I think Iowa, I mentioned, Illinois, Indiana, I think Nebraska, I think Washington, I think Michigan State, like the darkest of dark horses. But none of those teams have a shot to win 3-4 games.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And it would be 3 if you can somehow beat Ohio State, Penn State, or Oregon in the Big Ten title game. You don't have to win 3. But even then, it's like, no, I can't see them winning. Like, could I see Indiana upsetting someone in the first round? Yes. Can I see it going further than that? No. Like let's say they play a team like they travel up and have to play a 6 seed next year or something like that. Okay, great. Could they beat that team? Sure, it's possible. Especially now with a situation where it's a true 6 seed, as opposed to last year they played the 7 seed, who was actually the number 5 team in Notre Dame. But because of the Arizona State and Boise getting bumped up, and then Notre Dame gets bumped down. Like now, it's like if you're the 11, you're playing the 6, not seed. You're playing the 6th ranked team now, and so I think that gives them a better chance to have an upset win. But you're not going to win let's say somehow they upset Notre Dame this year. They're not beating Notre Dame and Georgia. That's my point. You may have that one. Everything went right. We won a game. But you're not good enough, in my opinion. You don't have the talent, in my opinion, to win 3 or 4. That's true for those teams. It's true for Michigan. It's true for Michigan State. It's true for Washington. Because here's the unfortunate thing for Washington State or Washington. Past the first round, you don't get to play at home anymore. And that team is a very different team away from home than they were home last year.
So let me clarify, because I think I misunderstood where we were going after we did the first 2 teams. Oregon would be just by default. They're not right there with Penn State and Ohio State for me, but they're right under that.
Yeah.
Oregon can get hot and win a national championship.
I'd put them as a dark horse.
Right?
I think it's fair to call them a dark horse since they haven't proven they can win like even a postseason game.
Yeah.
But I do think it's fair to. I'd call them. I don't put them on the level as Ohio State. And
I
agree with you on that.
I'll pull my pom-poms out for a second. I do think this year in particular, I do think Illinois is right there with Indiana. But you know something else? Michigan is sneaky. Let me tell you why Michigan is sneaky. If they do get decent quarterback play, now still, who's going to catch the ball? Who's going to get open? That's a really big question.
And I don't think their offensive line's as good this year either.
Well, man, I mean, going back to what level they played offensive line 2 years ago, to be
I don't even think it's as good as last year. I don't even think it's going to be as good as 2020.
But the offensive line at the end of the year was one of their strengths offensively, but almost by default because it had no choice.
But compared to what?
But, you know, if they can find a way to be in the mix with Ohio State coming to them, you say what you want to say. Ohio State has one more hurdle, and it is that game on that last Saturday in November. It's that game. And for some reason, let's say Michigan is a game behind Ohio State in the standings going into that game. It's like, and we're talking about Michigan sneaking into the Big Ten champ. The Big Ten for me is going to be, and we haven't even mentioned USC, which is another team from a talent standpoint that you can honestly sit back and say, if everything goes right with their talent, could they make a run? Probably not. You might give them 1 or 2 games. You might even give them a dark horse chance of getting to the playoffs. But I think that's what's so dope about. I think the Big Ten is going to be really dope this year. I really do.
It's a lot deeper than it was last year. It was
really
very top-heavy league last year.
I really do. Right. And I think teams like, we talked about this. I forget what the topic was, but we talked about this maybe a couple of shows ago. We talked about the fact that the middle of that Big Ten, man, there's some teams that I think jump up and bite you. I think Michigan State is ascending.
Was not the case.
We both love the quarterback at Purdue
last year.
We both love the quarterback at Purdue, what he can do, the playmaker he is.
Minnesota should have a legit run game this year. I'm telling you, man, I could be way wrong, Sean, but I like this Michigan State team. I do. Not to be like win a title, but like just a sneaky good team. Nebraska's going to be better. Washington's going to be better. I think USC is going to be better. I think Minnesota will be a solid team this year. I mean, like
anybody from that group jumping into your dark horse?
No, not to win it all. No. Like, none of those teams have the ability to win more than 2 in the playoffs. Like, I don't see it. And I think most can only win 1, if any. Like and that's the difference between like the Big 12. I had a list of 2 teams. I think there's like 8 teams that could win the Big 12. But just winning it doesn't, like if Iowa State gets into the playoff last year, they get crushed by Texas because I don't think they match up very well with Texas. And that's part of it is I just don't think any of those teams have a shot to win it all. Could they get into the playoff? Absolutely. Could any of them go on a run? I just don't think they have the horses to do so. Like that's just where I'm at when I break this down. I didn't even think Wisconsin might be better than they were last year. Their record may not reflect it because their schedule.
They just need to be healthy.
Yeah.
They need to stay healthy. The last 2 years.
They're going to run a system that's more geared towards what they should have been running to begin with.
Yeah.
So, Sean, let's go to the SEC. I have 3 top contenders in the SEC, and then I have 2 teams that I have as potential dark horses that I want to talk to you about. Let's start off with the top contenders. How many top contenders from the SEC do you have as like teams that you say this is a team that has a legitimate chance to win a championship?
I'm interested. Texas is my number one. I just think, look, they've been knocking on the door. They've been knocking on the door. We'll find out, because I don't think talent has been the issue, especially at the skill positions. That hasn't been the issue. Their talent on defense, their line play on both sides of the ball. I don't think they played Ohio State the toughest one could say out of anybody that Ohio State faced in the playoffs. I mean, they were
not
right
even close.
There. They're on the 1 yard line, but
not even close.
Tied up. I mean,
that's why final scores can be very misleading, Sean, because Notre Dame played Texas tougher if you just look at the final score. This is what was so dumb about some of the logic that BK used about, well, we played Alabama tougher than Ohio State did. Nonsense. That was toe-to-toe, back and forth. The spread was, in the final minute, they ran a 4th down play to try to tie it that got fumbled and ran back. Whereas you scored late to make it an 11-point game. So final score doesn't always tell you who played tougher. They beat Texas by more than they beat Notre Dame, but the Texas game was far more competitive start to finish than Notre Dame game was. By halftime in the Notre Dame game, you're like, it's going to need a miracle to come back. And props to Notre Dame for battling back, and we talked about this before. Ohio State offensively did take their foot off the gas a little bit after going up 31-7. That game was far more competitive than the championship game was, in my opinion. So I agree with you on that.
Let me tell you something, man. They are knocking on the door, and we'll find out, right? Because this is 2 close losses with a chance to win or tie the game. The year before, it was to Washington. They're right there with a chance to go ahead and win the game. They don't get it done. They come right back. They don't get it done against Ohio State. So was it Quinn Ewers not being able to make the play or make the plays? That's low-hanging fruit. That's easy. Well, okay, we just switch out Quinn for Arch. Arch is a better quarterback. He'll make the difference. But we're going to find out a lot about the program, the head coach, and the players, right? Because there are a lot of players, talented players, 5-star top 100 players that are on their roster that sat there waiting on their opportunity to say, hey, I don't know anything. Like you said earlier, I don't know anything about that Washington loss. It wasn't me. I don't know anything about that Ohio State loss. Wasn't me. It's my turn now, right? And so now we get to see, who this program really is, who they really are, because I think they have a hurdle to face. And I don't know if that hurdle is necessarily.
I think it's internal.
That's good. I was about to say, I don't know if it's actually a team or something, like you said, internal.
You could say it's Georgia, but I don't think it's actually Georgia.
I don't think it's Georgia.
It's an internal problem that makes Georgia a bad matchup for them. And it's why they also could not convert on the 1st and goal from the 1 against Ohio State. It's an internal problem, not necessarily an external problem, right? Like, I don't think Ohio State is losing to Michigan every year because Michigan just has a better team. There's a cultural problem at Ohio State that has not been addressed and wasn't even addressed last year because it didn't get addressed at all until after Michigan beat them. That has led to there's a lack of toughness in Columbus that Michigan exposes. It's not necessarily Michigan specific. And I think for Texas, you have an internal problem that Georgia was able to expose, that Ohio State was able to expose, that I think Notre Dame would have exposed, that you can address because it's a you problem, not a matchup problem. It's within your control. So I agree with that. And that's why I also have Texas as a top contender. They're actually my number 2. Yeah. They're my number 2. And I'll tell you who my number 1 is, Sean. My number 1 of my top contenders in the SEC is Alabama. And look, I know that Alabama had a down year last year. I think there was a lot of reasons for that. There were some culture problems in that program that I think are now gone. There was a incredible miscast or misfit between the quarterback and the offensive coaching. I think getting Ryan Grubbs back is big for that program. I think the guys that are still there are bought in. It's still a very talented roster. Getting Isaiah Horton completes that receiving core. You had one elite guy in Ryan Williams, a really nice, shifty, complementary player in Jeremy Bernard, but now you need that big guy in the boundary. And you look at it and say, okay, you've got that now in Isaiah Horton. Your offensive line should be one of the 10 best. I think there's debate. Are they like 7-9 or 1-3? That's up for debate, but it's still top 10. I think their D-line is big and physical. I think they're going to be better against the run this year. I think they got rid of some ego attitude issues off the defense last year. Got some talented players coming back. They're still a talented roster going into year 2 of the system. So I really like this Alabama team, and I don't need Ty Simpson to be great. Everyone's like, I need to see Ty Simpson first. That's fine. He just needs to not suck. Like he's just, your job is to get the ball to the playmakers. That's your job. And if he's not good enough to do that, then they're going to put in a stud, either Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. And then you roll with that. So I think Alabama is the team for me in the Big 12 or in the SEC, because number one, the coach at Alabama has proven to me that he can beat the coach at Texas on a big stage with a less talented roster. He has shown he can go win some of those big games. He's beat Dan Lanning. He's beat Steve Sarkisian, got them to a title game 2 years ago at Washington. And I just think going into year 2, that they're gonna be better fit to the system now because of some of the pieces they've been able to kind of replace and bring in and things like that. I also think that I have more faith that Alabama is going to be good in the trenches than I do that Texas is going to be good in the trenches this year. And that's why because like you look at Alabama, they're like, they didn't lose to Oklahoma because they didn't have talent to beat Oklahoma. They lost to Oklahoma because that team had no leadership, terrible culture. Can all that get fixed in a year? We'll find out. But I think they had a lot of addition by subtraction this offseason. I really do. And and as part of this, I have a bias towards Kalen DeBoer based on what he's done at previous places, that I think in year 2 he's going to get they're going to take a big jump. And I think they're going to be a little bit more balanced. But I think they have a quarterback now that's going to be better to get the ball. Like, guys, if you go break Alabama's film down last year, Sean, I know you've done this. We've talked about this. There are so many of those games that they lost where they have receivers wide open, just wide open. And the quarterback either couldn't read it or couldn't hit it. And you're like, you give me just a solid talent at quarterback that's smart, and they win that game, and they win that game, and they probably win that game. Like, that's how I feel about Alabama and their 4 losses last year. I think the only game where I'd say they got beat, and I don't know that you can put that on the quarterback, is the Oklahoma game, because I think the whole team quit in that game. Like, they didn't want to be there. And Vanderbilt, you could kind of put on the quarterback. I think that's also partly on the defense, but like the Tennessee game, you give them a quarterback that knows how to complete basic reads and completions, like in that system, that they win that game. So that's why I have them on a different level than I did last year. They're my number 1. Are they on your top contenders list, Sean?
They are.
Okay.
They are.
Who else do you have?
You know me. I'm a Kirby Smart fan, bro. It's like, you can say what you want. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that. They're not as talented and not this. And they just find a way, right? If they get past Notre Dame last year, they match up with Penn State. I don't know if they beat Penn State, but I'm like, they're probably in the game. I don't think Penn State routes them. They're just always going to be there as a program. So for me, that makes them a contender. Yes, I think they can make it to the SEC championship. And if they get in there, I think they can win 2 to 3 games. I just believe in the culture. I believe in the character of the program. And I believe in Kirby Smart. So I got Texas, I got Alabama, I have Georgia. Those are my top 3 teams. Probably sounds redundant.
I'm with you on Georgia. Look, I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. They're still Georgia. They're still fix this, and then you're kind of rolling. And so I think you'd be foolish to just write them off as not a legitimate title contender. I do think they're the third title contender in the SEC.
Yeah, they're third for me as well.
But they're still a title contender. Let's talk about some other teams that you have in the SEC. Who else? Do you have any other top contenders, or the rest of yours dark horses?
Dark horses. I'll tell you why.
Let's talk about. Let's take one at a time. Who's the first one you want to talk about?
I want to talk about A&M.
Okay,
I do. A&M.
I got them on mine. They're one of mine.
They were like leading the SEC deep into October, and then Marcel Reed. I know you're not a big Marcel Reed fan, but I do think Marcel Reed is going to be a better quarterback than he was last year.
He fits the system.
Fits the system. Yes,
that's why A&M right there. You're going to see it. A&M right there on my list.
Yeah,
they don't need him to be a stud in year 2, Sean.
No. And I think Elko he's one of those coaches with great character. No matter where he goes, you see the growth in the program. Even if they have some setbacks or they go through some testings, you're going to see the growth. Is that growth going to come in September in South Bend? I don't think so. But I think that's going to be something that's very necessary for them to take those in steps going into the actual SEC schedule. And I do see them. I think at the end of the year, you got a true test of where they were. Because even though they tried to come back against Texas pretty much controlled that game. Texas controlled the game. They didn't have the horses.
You didn't have Le'Veon Moss.
Yeah. So I think that was like a true litmus test of what a program is. And I think they're still probably a year away from being like in that top level of contenders. But I do think Dark Horse have a chance. They get in there. They probably can make a run. If everything goes right, they can get a big win here or there. Because like most SEC schools, the schedule is the schedule. Like you got tough games, right? 2 or 3, probably 3 to 4 tough games. And then it's about winning the certain matchups to see if you can get into that championship game. So Texas A&M is one. I thought about South Carolina. Go ahead.
Let's stay on A&M for a second, because I think that also, too, is having a quarterback that fits this. Colin Klein showed me something last year, and that is he doesn't really know how to call an offense without a quarterback that fits his style. And Marcel Reed, I think, fits his style. Well, he had Marcel Reed last year. Yeah, but they clearly were trying to gear the offense towards Connor Wegman during the offseason and then had to adjust on the fly, had some injuries, and they faded down the stretch. I think now that it's Marcel Reed's team, you're more suited to say, okay, now they've built it around him, the running backs, the big offensive line, and then you went out and got some – I don't think the receivers fit his system at all either. He didn't know how to use big, tall receivers. He's always thrived with those little quick shifty guys, and now he's got a bunch of those. And so I think the talent is more geared towards what he can do well. The big question for me with them is still Jay Bateman. Like, this is a team that needs everything to go right. They do. They need everything to go right. They need to catch some breaks and all that. But if they get hot in the postseason, I do think they're a team capable of going on a run. I do.
I'm going to go Ole Miss, man. Because first of all, I like the quarterback. They do lose a lot, especially from defense, pass rushing. Lost some talented players, even in the secondary. But they're just always – they can win. Beating Georgia is one thing. It's like the head scratcher. Can they get rid of the head scratchers every year? Can they get rid of the Kentuckys? Can they get rid of that game? Right? This can be another one of those programs that has a program-defining season or a program-defining win. You thought they had that against Georgia, right? They couldn't follow it up, which shows you the program is not necessarily ready to handle success.
It's not mature enough to handle success.
And it's very much a connection to what you just talked about with Oregon. Mm-hmm. Like the maturity, how they operate starts at the top, right? And hopefully you think and hope, man, can this head coach finally mature? Can he get off Twitter or X or social media ranting and complaining and actually right the ship
Mm-hmm.
and become more consistent as a program. You know, because you thought and you knew being at Ole Miss, they probably can't recruit with Georgia. They probably can't recruit with Texas A&M. But now they got the transfer portal. Maybe that closes the gap a little bit for Lane Kiffin, especially defensively. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much more talent they get. If the character of the program is the character of the program, then you're just going to go from, exceeding expectations to being underwhelming with the talent that you have. And so, but I still hold out hope that, because I think that Ole Miss team last year, if they had snuck in, they were talented enough to win 2 or 3 games in the playoffs. And I think that remains the same. It's just a matter of whether or not the program can mature, grow up a little bit.
I don't think they can, because I don't think he's capable of that. I mean, we're not talking about saying, like, here's a big difference, right? When you look at like Dan Lanning, he's got to grow up as a coach. Like, he still acts like a coordinator that's a head coach.
Yeah.
Rah guy. I'm cool. Let me smoke cigars because I flipped the recruit. Like, nah, bro, that ain't it. Smoke a cigar when you beat somebody good. You did that against Ohio State. Well, then you had to do it again and you got embarrassed. But like, Dan Lanning's also still a very young football coach. He's 39 years old right now. He's still, which in coaching is young. Lane Kiffin's 50. He is who he is. And I just don't know that he's ever capable of having that team. Like, Lane could this is what Lane could do. He could get in, win that upset, go on the road in week 1 of the playoffs, round 1, and upset somebody good. You're like, whoa. Get that quarterfinal game in round 2 and upset somebody else. You're like, uh-oh. And then they're going to go into the semifinals and get rolled because something the other team's coach will like bait him into a, pissing match. And like, there's coach that know how to play him. And that's my concern with Ole Miss. Talent-wise, Sean, you're right. Scheme-wise, you're right. Like, nothing you said is wrong if they can mature, spot on. It's just when you got a 50-year-old head coach, that's not usually when guys figure it out. You just kind of are who you are at that point in time. Like me, I'm 47. Like, well, why don't you try guys? I am who I am. Accept it. You know what I mean? Like, this is my personality. And I just don't think and that's why I also don't have South Carolina on my list. Now, one difference between South Carolina and Shane Beamer and Lane Kiffin is Shane Beamer's not a spring chicken. That dude's 48 years old. Like, he's older than I am. But he's only been a head football coach for a few years. He's going into year 5 at South Carolina. So there's a little bit more room for him to mature. And that's why South Carolina is a team, I think, Sean, there's 2 reasons why I think South Carolina might be a dark horse for me. They can match a lot of people athlete for athlete. And they've got a quarterback that's sort of I can put a team on my shoulders and go do something, like Riley Leonard. They have the best option to have this year's Riley Leonard on their football team. That guy that just kind of elevates and it may not always be pretty. And I'd argue that he was a better passer last year at times than what Riley was. But they've got that elevator at quarterback, and he's got enough athletes around him. I just don't know if they're good enough in the trenches, especially on offense, to me. And then Shane Beamer's another guy. Your team has those moments because you're not mature enough to say, I'm not going to lose my you-know-what on the sidelines of a football game because a call didn't go my way like he did against Notre Dame in 2022. I'm not going to let a coach bait me into an argument and make me look, like Jack Nicholson at the end of A Few Good Men. I'm going to rip off your head and down your throat. Like that's basically what I hear Shane Beamer saying when he was trying to go after Brett Bielema. Like, first of all, Brett Bielema will wear you out, first of all, okay? But second of all, grow up, dude. You wonder why your football team acts immature and makes those mistakes? Because you act that way. I've talked to people that have been at their practices. They practice chaotically. He's got to grow up as a coach, and I don't think he will. But the talent is there, and I think he's at least young enough to where there's at least maybe some hope. Young enough from an experience standpoint that there's at least some hope that he can grow up. But he's their biggest drawback. Shane Beamer's their biggest question mark for me. I don't have Oklahoma on this list. They're simply not talented enough, because I think a lot of people in the chat are confusing team capable of sneaking into the playoff for a team that's capable of winning it all. And being a dark horse to get into the playoff does not make, not everybody that makes the playoff is a title contender. Because not everybody that makes the playoff is, Indiana had no hope of winning 4 games last year. Tennessee had no hope of winning 4 games last year. Boise State had no hope of winning 3. Arizona State had no hope of winning 3. Indiana had no hope of winning 4 games last year. It's SMU had no hope of winning 4 games last year. These are teams that can win it all. And here's a team that is my final dark horse of the SEC. LSU. And I'll tell you why. I think they've got a quarterback that, when he's on, can light you up. I think that their receiving core gets too much hype, but if you take away the hype and you just look at what it is, it's pretty good. They've got a really talented young running back in Caden Durham. They've got depth at running back. This is their most talented defense they've had in years. This is the most talented defense they've had of the Brian Kelly era on all 3 levels. I like the job that Bryce Baker's done as their defensive coordinator. And they, like I say again, their secondary, did they get too much hype? Yes. But take away the hype and just look at how are they stack up against last year and the year before secondary, it's certainly improved. The big question for Blake Baker, I keep saying Bryce Baker. I don't know why. Blake Baker. The reason that I have my big concern, I have 2 big concerns with LSU. Number one is Brian Kelly. I have a hard time going from winning no big games to 3 or 4. Just be honest, I'm not trying to throw shade. That's just reality. When has Brian Kelly ever won on this stage? Never. So he's got to prove that he can. But you're always that guy until you prove it, right? But the offensive line is a major question mark for me. It wasn't that good last year, and they lost 4 starters, including the number 4 overall pick. But if their offensive line can just be solid, get a body on a body, that like just be a solid body on a body offensive line, this team can score some points, and I think their defense is going to be improved. So I do think you have to put them in that category of dark horse team. It's just because, like you say, well, what about their head coach? Hey, there's a lot of teams on this list that have head coaches that haven't proven they can win on the stage. I think Ryan Day had not proven he could win on the stage until last year. I mean, what was Ryan Day's claim to fame prior to this? They almost won a couple semifinal games. I mean, the only semifinal game he ever won was the COVID year. And I've told you, I throw a lot out with the COVID year. Like, he lost in 19, right? Had the COVID year in 2020. 21, they didn't make it in. 22, they made it in, got beat. Yeah, but it was really close. They still got beat. Didn't make it in 23. Didn't make it in, and then 24, you finally went. So until last year, Ryan Day was that guy that hadn't proven he could win on that stage. And then until he did. So, I think you can't just eliminate a team just because their coach has yet to prove he can be that guy. You have to look at the entirety of it. But that's also what makes him a dark horse. Because if Brian Kelly had proven he can win on the stage, they're not a dark horse. They're just a contender. If they can just fix the offensive line, this team's going to be pretty good. And that to me is why I think you have to, in my opinion, I have to at least put them in the dark horse category.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I know teams like Missouri, Florida are teams that, people love to talk about. Florida got hot at the end of the year. Missouri, drink what he's done. Can they improve upon the disappointment of last year, right? Because they were viewed as one of those teams that might be able to get in and make a run. Win a couple of games in the playoffs as the season started last year. And then it was the offense that really sputtered. You didn't expect that with the talent they had at wide receiver and the quarterback coming back. So South Carolina, I'm just not as I agree with everything you said.
What's your hold up on them, Sean? What's your hold up?
They had the same effect as Ole Miss. There's always going to be that one head scratcher.
Yep.
Every year. Is that one talent is never the issue. Talent's never the issue. They'll turn around, they'll beat Clemson at the end of a year, and then turn around the next year. Last year, they had Alabama on the ropes at Alabama. Should have won that game. Should have beaten LSU by double digits. They were in full control of that game. The refs helped a little bit with some bad calls, but Yo, they gave the game away. It is like, yes, you have everything you need, but you find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. You're like, you just snatch it and pull it. And I can't put my trust in them quite yet as a program. I agree with everything you said about Lenore Sellers,
I
the
agree with
talent
you.
he has, the ability he has, what they have athletically to be able to hang with everybody that's at that level.
Mm-hmm.
But you talk about like, dude, Bielema literally walked across the field. I don't know what he said, how he baited, and from that point on, the team,
Lost
Beamer, they
his
just
mind.
lost his mind.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing?
Same thing happened against Notre Dame. I don't
And
know if they showed it on TV, but like he lost it on a penalty that was not called on his sideline.
yeah,
I mean, like lost it. Like I thought he was going to punch the ref in the face, and like then you wonder why your team plays the way that they do,
and Beelan was walking back to his sideline, just smirking and laughing,
and his team's loving it.
just
Yeah,
laughing.
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, man, I have to see it. I have to see it. Which goes back to our conversation. That's why, as much as you talk about talent, man, having the right guy
Mm-hmm.
to infuse character that no matter what happens,
Yes.
guys, let's stay locked in to what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
And see, when you see guys on the sideline throwing fits and temper tantrums, I mean, Nick Saban's thrown a temper tantrum before. All coaches throw temper tantrums. We've seen Marcus last year. That call against Jack Kaiser against Penn State, Marcus, he caught himself though.
It's you
like,
again.
okay,
He's like, it's you again, because he had made some bad calls against them before.
Yeah, but you know, you have to have that ability to catch yourself and say, okay, that was a moment. Now we're back to winning this football game.
Yep.
Right? Or handling success and saying, yeah, we beat Georgia. That's fine. I'll give you a night to celebrate, but we're back to work.
Yep.
We're back to work tomorrow.
Why? Because we got one more guarantee.
We got one more game. And it goes back to what players, Lou Holtz, they would say, yo, he would coach us harder the week of Navy and Army than when we were facing Miami and Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Why? He was creating a culture of consistency. No. We're not playing the schedule. We're playing us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not coaching this schedule. I'm not going to coach you harder just because it's Miami or Michigan. No, I'm coaching you just as hard for the other teams that we're favored to beat by 4 touchdowns. So that no matter what, when you come to practice, you got an expectation. This is about to be hard work, and Saturday is going to be easier than what we just went through. So that you just talked about what you've heard about practices being chaotic. No, you're not winning big games like that because you don't have the consistency leading into the big games. No.
Final team. There's one team outside the Power Four that is a legit title contender, and that's Notre Dame, which is an obvious one. I mean, they were there last year. Bring back the majority of their coaching staff. The biggest new addition they made, the 2 new additions they made. One guy was the running backs coach on a team that went to the semifinals. The other guy is a defensive coordinator team that's won a championship in the playoff era. It was the first playoff of the playoff era, but and you've got your head coach back. You've got your offensive coordinator back. Your team goes into year 2. You bring back a lot of talent. You're deep. You're athletic. You know, you look at them and you put them, you put Ohio State, you put Penn State, Bama, Texas, Clemson, Georgia. There's that group of the teams that I think have the best shot to win it. Notre Dame certainly in if not at the top of that list, and meaning at the top, meaning that top group of 2 or 3 teams that have a shot to win it. So it's for Notre Dame. It's going to come down to, is their quarterback as good as we think he is, and can the team stay hungry? I think that's really what it comes down to. Can you build on what they showed last year, where we're not looking at, we don't need external motivation anymore. We finally learned what it means to, and you were talking about it with Lou Holtz, talking about South Carolina, Sean, but look, we're going out and preparing this week to play Notre Dame football. I don't care who we play. It doesn't matter. We're going to play Notre Dame football. There's a standard we've set for ourselves that we have to live up to, regardless of who the opponent is. And I think if they can answer that question, then I think they're a favorite to get back to the title game this season. they're in that group of 3 or 4 teams that have the best shot to get to the title game. So that's why Notre Dame is the final team on my list. So there you are, Sean. Anybody else from the non-group of Power 4 that you would throw in there besides Notre Dame? Or you want to add a little bit on to the Notre Dame conversation before we get out of here? We do have a couple super chats I want to get to, but anything else to get to for that?
No, great show today.
Yeah, it was fun.
Great chat.
It was very
Everybody.
fun.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Sean, before we get out of here, we do have a couple super chats to get to here. Beefeater ND08 says, my weekly fare for a ride on the Petty train, choo-choo. Thank you for that, Beefeater. Patrick Gaselli says, IB team, I'm a little late today, so you may have covered this, but apologies if that's the case. On the Intel O-line report, didn't see Tarek or Otting in them. Are they still battling? Had high hopes for both of them. Much love. First of all, Patrick, I appreciate the super chat very, very much. Number one. Number two, those are Intel things only for the message board. So if you have a question about it, ask it on the message board. I'm not going to talk about it out loud. But with the one thing I will say about Tarek is he's coming back from 2 injuries. He had 2 injuries in the spring, shoulder and a foot, I think. So he's still working back to health. So not a lot to report there other than just working back to health. And then with Joe Otting, I can't possibly get intel on everybody. That's real intel other than he's working hard. So anyone that's not on there, it's not that it's bad. If I got bad intel, meaning somebody's not doing well, I'd put it in there. So if it's not in there, it's just because I didn't get enough. And I don't view talking to one source who said, oh, he's working hard, he looks good. That's not intel. That's like I could make a blanket statement like you're a scholarship player at Notre Dame. Yeah, okay, you're working hard and you look good. Yeah, that's called the summer. You know what I mean? Like this is trying to go more beyond that. So while I greatly appreciate the super chat, those intel pieces are kept on the board for a reason. So I do appreciate the super chat very, very much. But that's the reason you didn't hear about Tarek, and that's the reason I don't have everybody discuss. Like I don't have an intel piece on Jeremiah Love. I won't have one on him. Well, why? Because I only get a limited opportunity to talk to people. I'm not wasting them on talking about Jeremiah Love and Jadari Price. I already know. You know what I mean? Like I already know. So I want to find out more about Keidron Young, who I have intel on. I want to find out more about, I don't need to spend 5 hours talking about Jaden Greathouse. I kind of know. I want to find out how's Cam Williams doing, how's Mike Gilbert doing. Like those are the ones like I think are more intriguing than the kind of the knowns. But I have limited time and limited opportunities. I can't possibly get intel on all 85, 90 plus scholarship guys, plus walk-ons who they like a lot. And then the last one from Raymond Hart. And love these college football parts of these Monday shows. IB, Raymond, we enjoy doing them. I mean, that's part of the reason we included it in it, because Sean and I love talking about college football as a whole. And we thought that it would be good to do because we think that if you really want to understand where Notre Dame ranks among the nation's best teams, you have to have some knowledge of the nation's best teams. And we think that makes it for a far more fun conversation. So I appreciate all those super chats. Sean, I appreciate you for a great show today, man. That was a great idea. That team topic was a great idea. And we're going to have some more coming up. So we'll be back. Let me see real quick. Let me look at the practice schedule to find out if we're going to be back next Monday. I forget if Notre Dame has a practice on Monday. So let me just pull that up here real quick. And Monday, nope, we do not have practice availability on next Monday. So we will be back next Monday with some fun RTCF topics. But before we do leave here, folks, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. If you don't mind, we would love it on your podcast platform. If you could go to your favorite podcast platform, be Apple or Spotify or whatever else, leave us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that very, very much. It certainly helps us continue to spread what we're kind of do here. And of course, if you want to support Irish Breakdown even further than just with your time, which we greatly appreciate, you can go to the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com, sign up for our message board with a lot of great stuff on there. I've had 3 intel pieces dropped. I got 2 more planned. I'll drop 1 tonight, drop 1 tomorrow. They were so big, Sean, that I just was like, I don't want to put all these in like 1 or 2 because then a lot of stuff's going to get lost. So I was like, let me just break them up a little bit. So I've got the offensive ones all done. I got a couple defensive ones I'm going to get out here in the next couple days as well. So be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow with Trev. We're going to have some Notre Dame topics to discuss tomorrow. Some maybe some more college football topics to discuss tomorrow. This next month's going to be fun. We're going to do conference predictions. We're going to do preseason All-America teams. We're going to do a final preseason top 25. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sean and I are going to have a top Heisman contenders RTCF segment coming up here very soon as well. So a lot of really cool stuff still to discuss here this summer. Even because again, we don't get a ton of access. We get one full practice, and I think 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 other partial practices. So we're not going to get to see a lot of that. So we're going to do a lot of our previews and all that stuff during fall camp as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But Thursday, we will get back from practice and we will have a show. So be ready for that as well. For Sean, I'm Brian. Have an awesome rest of your day, folks. We'll talk to you again here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.